When it comes to cooking a piece of meat, I've noticed that over the last couple of years, there are two methods in particular that have become extremely popular. And the first one is smoking meat, and the second one is sous vide. So smoking meat has become popular because in the past it was something that you had to have a smoker in order to do so. You still need a smoker, but smokers have become affordable. People are buying them and making smoked meat at home. The second is a sous vide, which also never even existed, but then when it existed was so expensive and only used in fancy restaurants. Now sous vides are affordable and people are sous videing meat at home as well. Both of these methods have something in common, and that is when you cook something, when you're cooking a piece of meat, it cooks for a period of time, but the period of time is rather long. And one thing we know, the longer you cook the piece of meat, the softer the piece of meat gets. However, the Chassam Sofer points out that there's one part of meat or piece of meat that does not become softer but becomes harder. And that is when you're cooking liver. We actually, halachically, are only allowed to cook liver by broiling it because the liver is made of blood, so it has to be completely broiled. And the way we know when liver is done is that it is extremely hard. The longer you cook it, the harder it becomes. What does all of this have to do with our parsha? The pasuk tells us that Hashem said to Moshe, Kaved leiv paro. He's going to make Paro's heart hard. The word kaved is heavy. He's going to make his heart hard and heavy. And that word kaved also means the liver. And so the Chassam Sofer explains that as opposed to normally when you cook a piece of meat and it becomes softer, the liver becomes harder, and we apply that to the story of Paro as well. You would think that the more makos, the more plagues that Hashem brought on Paro, the softer, the more pliable, the more flexible Paro would become as far as his dominance and his enslavement of the Jewish people. But Paro was like a liver. He was just the opposite. The more plagues, the more he was cooked, the harsher, the harder he became. Paro remained inflexible, he remained unpliable, and therefore Hashem brought more and more makos upon him to break him, to soften him. Which really brings us to ask ourselves the question, that when it comes to times in which we may have some drama in our lives, in our family, among friends, sometimes a conflict or a confrontation, a standoff with someone, and as long as it lasts, the longer it lasts, do we become softer or harder in our position? Are we pliable? Do we become flexible so that we can come to a resolution, that we can make shalom, we can make peace with the other person? Or do we harden ourselves into our own position, insisting that we are right, continuing to be stubborn on some level, and because of that, conflict just continues? May we be zocha, may we merit to learn from the lesson of Paro and the way he was cooked, applied to the makos, to the plagues that Hashem brought on the Mitzrim, and may we be flexible and pliable in our lives, in good times as well as in times of drama and conflict. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.